to Drexel Debate Union. We will be doing our demo debate today, and I'll walk you through exactly what everyone's doing while we're debating. And feel free to join our Discord. The QR code will be in the corner at all times. All right, so about us. So you don't need experience to come join us. You can meet lots of new people, and we compete all around the world. Like last year there was Vietnam, GW, Yale, Toronto, and Montreal all last year. And this club is a great way to improve your speaking and your arguing skills. As you can see, there's some pictures of us. And we also have other events planned. So sign up for our coffee chat where you can chat with one of our officers about debate. And you can also sign up for our novice training camp. And the dates will all be in the forum and on our Instagram. And our Discord link is also there. So I'll put this back up in a few minutes. So we have a few motions planned for today's demo debate, and you guys can actually vote on which one we can have our people argue about. So the first one is about reallocating funding from police systems to community-based intervention programs, such as identifying young men susceptible to gun violence and providing them with cognitive behavioral therapy, hands-off strategies involving initiatives like training 911 call receivers or engaging local community members to intervene in conflicts before they escalate into violence. And then our second motion is, as a young person recently out of long-term relationships trying to move on, this house prefers avoiding romantic/sexual encounters with others other than seeking many romantic sexual encounters with others. And then our last motion is, this house, as Jesse, James, and Meow, would stop trying to catch Ash's Pikachu. So.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Can I also? Yeah, if you want to. You debate it. Yeah, if you guys want to select, just scan the QR code and pick one, and then we'll debate the one everyone wants.
I already voted.
Okay. All right, so it looks like the first motion has won, reallocating funding from police systems. So basically how this will work is we'll give the teams 15 minutes to prep their points, and then after that there will be a speaker. They each get 7 minutes of speaking, and I'll walk you through while we're debating. So right now, 15 minutes of prep time.
You can also do introductions.
Okay, so basically how this debate works, after 15 minutes of prep, the opening government team will speak for 7 minutes with their first speaker. Then the opening opposition goes, and then they also speak for 7 minutes, and then the second speaker from the opening government also speaks, and then the last speaker for the opening opposition speaks for 7 minutes. And since we usually there's 8 people who debate in this round, but since we only have 4, we'll only be doing a top half of
replies also. We also do a reply.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so 5 minutes of reply speeches afterwards.
Okay. Do you want to explain that?
You're the moderator. Like we have, you have reply speeches for 5 minutes.
Okay, so after the opening speeches have been given, there'll be 5-minute reply speeches from both sides afterwards.
You can start your time.
All right, so 15 minutes of prep time begins.
We just run it, right?
It's not bad.
There's no CGC.
Yeah, I was just explaining the general. We have a lot of time.
I would need your phone, by the way, because my phone is getting recorded.
What do you need that phone for?
Hmm?
What do you need?
Time.
Okay.
Okay. So prep time is over, which means that the opening government team will do their first speech.
Can I get your phone for the timer? Minus.
So this first speech will be 7 minutes long, and I'll be timing.
Wait, is this set to always the live?
Yeah,
No, I mean, like, would it turn off in a few minutes?
yeah.
Hmm?
Like, it won't turn on.
It won't turn off. Okay, speech will start in my first word. In our pursuit for reaching a society that's equitable and one without crime, we need to take proactive approaches rather than reactive approaches to prevent the possibility of crime before they even happen. Sadly, we don't have access to technology where we know who's going to be a criminal, who's going to not, so we do the next best thing, which is what we are doing here. In many circumstances, intervention actually improves the lives of individuals, both who commit the crime either out of necessity or short-term desire because they're not able to see the long-term future. These individuals' lives are improved because we're able to intervene, give them the right resources or give them the right help to prevent them from actually entering into these circumstances, getting locked up into systems like prisons and never being able to get out when they could have actually evaluated this on the other side. But it also improves the lives of individuals who are the victims of these crimes are affected because the crimes don't happen in the very first place on our side of the house, which means we're able to improve the lives of people in general and we're able to move towards a society that's more and more crime-free. First, on setup, what does the status quo look like right now? First, police officers are seen as one fits all. So you have police officers who engage in all sorts of duties, from like being first responders with someone who's walking around the neighborhood shadily to active shooter situations where they have to respond. Means you don't have specific amount of specificity in terms of the jobs they do. From things like traffic stops that are available where they're going around and seeing if someone is not doing traffic violations to other circumstances, all of this happens under the purview of one police department. Also, in many circumstances, they do things like writing reports or doing front paperwork. Often at times 911 calls are redirected to police officers who actively have to help someone who's going through certain situations. This is not okay because in many circumstances they are not capable, and no human being is capable of being able to switch between different circumstances, different customizable situations, and being able to deal in those situations accurately to be able to help everyone intervene in many circumstances, which means even on the opposition side, even if they try to do this, they don't have the capacity to do it well because police officers at the end of the day are human beings. How do we improve the system? First, how do we solve violence and improve individual situation? I think first we're able to just do better training, better systems that exist per se, because you have divided specific labor. So the program, the money that we're taking, we're actually investing into programs that don't exist in status quo or ones that are heavily underfunded, which means these right now in status quo, when you want to reach out to someone and I don't know who to call, I reach out to the police officers and I believe they will help in those circumstances. Now when you develop these programs, individuals know about them. So I know if a certain kind of situation happens, I can call these specific individuals or I can call 911 and they'll direct me to these specific individuals who are going to help me rather than cops in the very first place. This means in many circumstances, because these programs are reliable, which they do because we're actively taking a large chunk of money and putting into them, means that these programs work, which means you have more of money chunk available in order to run specific trainings into individual programs rather than try to train one police officers for multiple skills, which doesn't scale very easily. Second, I think the specificity also solves. In many circumstances, it's really, really hard to code switch. If I'm dealing with a violent offender in a circumstance where I have to fight with them, and I might have to use my gun, where I might have to fight for my life, I think the weight on me is quite harsh because I have to take the perfect decisions because it comes to me. This is not the same situations in another circumstance that might not escalate in the same scenario. But when I'm often engaging in both of these circumstances back and forth continuously, means I'm not able to code switch in the right manner. I'm not able to change the way I'm thinking. And this is also with us human beings. We also do this on a regular basis. When I'm interacting and I've had a bad day at work, I often at times don't react to other situations when I'm meeting other people in the same way. I don't think police officers are God. odds that they are able to do this quite well. So we also stop this because we only have to train them in one specific thing, and one specific scenario, in violent situation rather than non-violent situation, which means in the reactionary cases, we're able to train them better because we don't have to expect them to make those changes, make those customizations in the very first place on our side. So we are able to improve the system by having specificity, given our society has improved and our civilization has improved by giving people specific labor and training them in that way so people can gain comparative advantage and do their job well. I think we just improve in the next evolution of our civil system, which is how we deal with crime. Second, and this is like a more longer claim on recidivism, I want to posit that most of the crimes and the most of increased amount of crimes, whether it's gang violence, etc., happens through things like recidivism and happens through people who are stuck into the system. There's certain claims in this like argument, right? First, I think in situations where you have to interact with police officers, you don't know how the situation is going to go in the very first place. In many circumstances, you don't know if you're getting locked up for your life and not being able to get off, or you don't know that in many circumstances you'll go scotch-free. So I think in many circumstances, you get trauma from these interactions when you have to interact with police officers on a regular basis, which I believe in many circumstances lead people to make poor decisions in many cases. Second, I think police officers also want to prosecute you in cases of uncertainty because they will be held accountable if they let a criminal go, which means they'd much rather take you back to the prison cell or back to like jail in the very first instance, keep you overnight and then leave you, rather than let you go scotch-free in the very first place, because they will be held accountable and it's their job on the line, right? And they want to do it well for them. But third, often at times when you get stuck in the system, the burden is on you to get out of it. You have to be the one who has to get a lawyer. You are the one who has to get burdened. When the system is plagued with so many people coming into the system, when the system doesn't have enough amount of lawyers, means that it's on me to get out of the system. In many circumstances, this means people individually get stuck into the system, and often at times when they come out, they're institutionalized and they're not able to integrate into society, which means it's quite often that they actually go back into committing crime again. When I come out of jail, and even if I've been there for 1 to 2 years, and 1 to 2 years is a lot, your technology changes. Think of like last year, we didn't have ChatGPT. The way our education system exists has significantly changed. Think of the years when smartphone happened. Changes of 1 year to 2 years institutionalize people to keep them locked into places, and they're not able to adapt to systems, which means in many circumstances they end up joining gangs, they end up joining other places where they don't have any other options of committing. When we cut down these interactions to a large degree, where you don't interact with police officers or the chance of you going to jail for no reason at all, we're able to also solve the edge cases of people who get stuck into the system and add, etc. But third, I also want to posit that there's like just lesser burden. So I think if you want to just like have police reform, when people have active fear and people have active distrust in the system because of historical baggage, I think we're able to solve this on our side of the house, because people are more receptive to work with systems that they believe are fair rather than systems that they have animosity towards. On their side of the house, you just have back and forth battle between two systems that don't actually want to work with each other. On our side, you create a third system where people actively want to listen, where people know that this is about intervention and helping you, which in many circumstances just means that individuals are more receptive to working with you. On their side of the house, they're going to escalate. In areas that are written in gang violence, where individuals don't believe in police officers because they believe that they killed their parents who were in a particular gang, I think they're more receptive to join new programs, that they don't have ideas of vengeance, that they don't have ideas of vengeance against the state, and they're more likely to just engage with them in proper manner. So we just get better police reform on our side of the house. For all of those reasons, propose.
The government wants to tell you that they can separate the responsibilities of police into responding to violent criminals and responding to people with mental health challenges. In reality, those two have very blurry lines, and we often don't know what police will be responding to before they actually get to the scene, which means that we can't really separate the roles of police officers from only responding to crimes and then have people who only respond to mental health challenges. And while the government will argue that, oh, there's a lot of duties for someone to take on, it's not like we don't expect someone to take on a lot of duties when they are required, when the job requires them to do so, right? Like, if we look at pilots, for example, we require our pilots to judge the mental capacity of passengers entering their plane, to be able to treat medical emergencies to some extent of their passengers when they enter a plane, especially not for big aviation flights, but for small general aviation flights. We require pilots to have strong knowledge of weather conditions and how those may change, mechanics of how their plane works, and all of these different things. And so when the task requires it, we can expect people to step up to do the job. And so what we actually see is that if we were to defund the police, first of all, we would, because we're defunding the police, we're reducing the amount of police officers that can be out on patrol to deter crime. We're reducing the amount of police officers that are available to investigate crimes, and we're reducing the amount of police officers that can simply just are available to respond to crime. What we'll overall see is that people would feel more free to commit crimes and have a much higher possibility of not getting caught doing these crimes. And so we'll see an increase in crime rates, as we've already seen during the defund the police movements, where especially in San Francisco, we've seen a lot of increases in carjacking and all that without the threat of the force of law being used against you. Additionally, these programs are by their very nature not deterrent-inducing, because they know that when you commit a crime, you can be forced into therapy or some community program. And so, because it's still undesirable, but it's less effective to live than a strict system that may potentially be life-altering. And so, really, the police do a better job at deterring crime than a community-based intervention program would do. And we already live in a status quo where there is already a history and understanding of people having problems with the police, and because there's still going to be police interactions that happen even if we were to defund the police a little bit, in the gov world, these bad things still exist, and people are still going to feel animosity with the police. And because of this, there's not like there's going to be mutual understanding or more willingness to work together that comes out to some better action. And so, because the police are already underfunded, reducing funding would be bad, because really what we need to do is increase police funding instead, and help the police put up guardrails so that we don't encounter as much police violence in unnecessary situations. This can take the form of many different policies, like increased trainings, especially for how to respond to mental health challenges. We can increase the rules of engagement for when police are allowed to use their weapons, and have the appropriate training to do so. Have use of force reviews, where we can review when the police are discharging the weapons, and with body cameras, we can also go ahead and use that as a deterrence to lying on reports on use of force reviews. We can have state officials hold local police departments accountable, and make sure that they are following these policies as well. And so we have much more cost-effective options that we can use to go ahead and reduce the police violence that is happening without defunding the police itself. And so overall, what this leads to is the opposition side solving for all of the government's arguments, where they argue that the weight of perfect decisions is going to be hard, right? But we need our police to make perfect decisions, and as perfect as possible, and when they do need to be able to differentiate when someone is going to be a violent criminal, when someone is suffering a mental health challenge. And they also argue where things like most crimes are going to happen through recidivism, but the people who get stuck in the system are still going to commit crimes when they get out of the system, right? And if recidivism is happening, if recidivism is true, then they're going to get out of the system, maybe join another gang, because the problems of reintegration will still be there. Employers would be unwilling to hire ex-cons. They're going to have the world would have moved on without them in the 10, 20, 30 years that they spent in prison. And so the system is still going to be working against them, which still leads them to commit more crime. And so these community interventions would be useless at best and harmful at most, because while we get no additional benefits, we will see more crime due to less deterrence that these people will face, and because they won't be individually accountable through personal morals and all of that, just because it's already been degraded, and as a means of survival, they're going to need it. And so to add to their cost-benefit analysis, we do need the deterrence that police provide in preventing crime. But additionally, the policy of defunding the police gives political advantage to Republicans, especially when crime is a major election issue. And so what we'll see then, even though while we get very little benefits for these new community-based programs that we're going to set up through defunding the police, we'll see that Republicans will be able to campaign on this issue. They'll be getting elected, and when Republicans get elected, we see a whole lot of other issues that are going to be springing up, like cutting off access to abortion, like making it harder to vote so that people can't change these laws once they're already enacted. We're going to see more conservative judges being appointed and therefore make these laws stick. We're going to see increased access to guns happening, and when private ownership of guns increases, there's a higher likelihood of gun violence then occurring in the community. And so for all these reasons, and because the government is not solving anything while creating more problems, you should vote for the opposition.
How much time do we have?
7 minutes.
Okay. So my timer will start at my first word. Okay. So first I'd like to point out the things that they said in response to it. So first they said that that in our house that we cannot separate the police to violent criminals and then have them responding to mental health challenges. Well, we said to reallocate the funds in going down from the non-violent police, like traffic stops or tickets or anything like that, and reallocate the funds to institutions that such as call centers for when there are people who have thoughts of committing crime, and to call them at any time of the day, and to have these extra funds into training into these call centers for the employees of that, to show them how they don't have to commit the crime, they don't have to do these types of things. They also said that reducing the police deters crime, and that people are more prone to think that they will be finding committing the crime since that's police officers. Our stance is that we have to defund the non-violent police section and to put it into the violent police section, so then they have better perfect decision making, and that we will invest more into training the police sector or the violent police sectors. And second of all, there are more ways to deter. There's infinite ways to deter crime. There's jail, there's fees, there's community service. There are ways that we can increase the awareness of consequence to crime ratio, and so then that point just does not fall through. They also said that there's still no mutual understanding between the gangs and the criminals and the violence into what police actually stand for. On our side of the house, or on their side of the house, that does not exist at all. On our side, we want to invest in these institutions that show and educate what police actually do, and that it's not just police versus all. It's police and helping the communities of these underprivileged people, and we need to show them that there's no world where the police is just against them. We have to show them that the police is for them, that the police is supporting their lives in ways that they never thought possible on their side of the house, and that these gangs and these criminals have these this presupposition of just F the police mentality that is not healthy and that it cannot go on. And on their side of the house, they don't want to invest in education. They don't want to defund the police, reallocate that fund into institutions that show these criminals that there are other ways. They already said that police are already underfunded, which they did. Their house did not explain how they're underfunded and how to fix the underfunding, since there's no there is no evidence into police actually being underfunded, and our side shows that they are extremely overfunded and that we need to reallocate that funds into the above stated plans. The way to perfect decisions is hard, which is why we need to invest in a load of trainings to try and mediate the decision making, where you have to code switch from calmness and passion to mental health, or to alertness, and to show police officers the proper way to handle people of all ranges. So we have to train less people, and that there is less political capital, meaning you can have more enforceable policy and do it much more easily. On the opposite side, police is underfunded and have less people, and that they have to do more work, meaning you have to do double the training, but also op is able to do better filter while hiring. So hire better police officers when they need to hire less police officers. On their side, police departments take so much work that they need to have very low hiring requirements and less training that they can do so. Now, you can have these new systems that you can compare the empirical data from the past when police used to do the job. Competition means that now there is increase in the incentive of departments to do their job well. Defunding the police does not help Republicans. One, there is a non-comparative. Republicans also don't support police reform in many circumstances because it is an optically weak political decision. Even if this does help, when we improve the lives of actual people, we need to help. When we help them get help or prevent a school shooting, or they receive better responses, means that public support will come. Public support is what we need, and the public from these underfunded or underprivileged societies need to understand that defunding the police is the correct decision, because we need to reallocate that funding to institutions that help these societies. There's also it's not relevant to this motion. If we talk about policy, Republicans might oppose this. Republicans might benefit short term from it, actually. So one thing that the opposition did not touch on is proactive approaches as opposed to prevention. We need to focus on preventative actions as opposed to proactive approaches. These preventative actions is what I said before, how we need to invest in these call centers, invest in these institutions that help with mental health, that we need to lower recidivism, which is the only way to do so is by getting these already in jail criminals and showing them, or putting them through a process that shows that there is other ways. And we need to invest also in showing that businesses and employers and all these firms that have this idea of criminals already being bad employees, that we need to invest in educating them and showing that these criminals are not like all the other criminals, and that they have changed, and that they have these reformed ideas of what police are. Again, just to reiterate, the criminals in these gangs don't have the correct knowledge of what police do, so they're not sure how to act around them. As soon as we tap into this market of these gangs and these criminals and showing them the correct way to think about police violence, this will support crime, or support less crime. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a bit rusty, everyone, so sorry. Okay. My argument will start on my next word. I'd first like to emphasize the point about losing or the defunding the police would actually affect the personnel and the amount of personnel being able to help out with other with the amount of not just crimes but other situations happening that could prevent anything significant that builds upon crime, basically. More or less, if we lessen the amount of personnel, we are not able to have people that are able to be on duty or readily available for being on duty. Even though we could have some people, the only thing is that if we reduce that amount, and if we're not able to at least get a lot of people for those specific situations where if there is someone that is in grave danger and no one's available for that time, especially if there's less funding for that specific, for a specific branch or something, it's not gonna help a lot because we need people to be there and be on call just in case if something is, if there are a lot of crimes in a certain scenario or a certain area especially. Just because we can allocate towards one specific branch, one specific area, that doesn't mean that it's going to, it's going to actually increase, it's going to still contribute to the increase in crime. But now, just to go along with some of the points that were made on government side, or the other side. Basically, saying that the government does allocate funds to the call centers where people can call, people can call just in case. If there is something that is going on. So if that's the case, if we do lose funding and there's not enough personnel, as we were saying before, then who is actually going to be able to be called in that certain scenario or those scenarios? And then also, another point that was made was that we can deter crime through things like community service. It's still not as strong of consequence, as a consequence. So that changes in the cost-benefit analysis would do anything in terms of in favor of committing crimes. We are showing, by this we are showing that we are helping underprivileged people and showing them that the police can be there for them in a sense. The government also as well, generally what we can see from some of the points that were made is that so in terms of hiring, again with the personnel issue, if we won't hire as many police officers, as the point was saying on the other side, we can select better officers for certain situations. This is almost like saying if we hire less doctors, we're going to have better doctors. But even though there's the supply of doctors can't meet the medical demand of patients and community as a whole will suffer, and this is the same with police. So we do still need, even though we could say like if we hire less, then we're going to have better. That doesn't mean that it doesn't. It's not a correlate. It doesn't correlate, which I think is a weak point on the opposition, their side. And another thing that we'd also like to say is that okay, sorry guys. Sorry.
LOR.
What we see happening in this debate is that the government side wants to show how they're going to somehow reduce help all these people who are in the system get out of the system, and how they're going to improve police interactions, and how they're going to try and how they're going to try making this more cost effective, that they're going to hire better police, that they're going to improve all of these things. But the fact of the matter is that it's not true, because as we've already shown you, what we're going to end up seeing is that because of the lack of deterrence provided as a result of defunding the police, and because people will notice that people will know for a fact that there's going to be less of an ability for the police to respond to them, especially for low-level crimes. The police will be forced to give up on enforcing certain matters. The police aren't going to be able to respond to crime as much, and at the end of the day, the police won't be given the training to respond to mental health challenges that they're inevitably going to still see on a day-to-day basis in their line of work. And so what we see here is that nothing is going to improve. The system is still going to be against these people. People are going to get out of prison, and they're going to face a world that has moved on without them, and that is unwilling to help them or hire them or give them any sort of support. And their government will try to tell you that, oh, maybe if we defund the police, we'll show the community that somehow the police is now willing to work with them, that we can trust them. But wouldn't that just be sending a signal to the community that the police is unworkable, that they're unfixable, unreformable, and so that's why we're taking funding away from them and giving it to someone else instead? And so what we see is that people in a world living without deterrence will be free to commit more crimes. The people that already suffer from police violence won't be getting help. The government has proposed setting up a call center where people are going to be like, hey, I'm thinking about maybe committing a crime, but maybe you want to talk me out of this. This is simply not going to happen. And these resources, maybe they'll be available, but at the end of the day, aren't going to be utilized as much. They're not going to change the way that people commit crimes. The socioeconomic factors that lead to crime will still be there, and after people are done committing crime, then they get out of prison, all of those factors will still be there as well. What we really need to do instead is, instead of defunding the police, which is there to help, one, prevent crime through just by their presence, patrolling and all of that, and two, the police are able to go ahead and actually respond to crimes that are happening, is, at the end of the day, what we need to do is fix the entire rest of the system instead, and we need to not give Republicans political ammunition to go ahead and not support police reform, make the police worse. So that's why, at the end of the day, you should be voting for the opposition.
Speech will start my first word. The problem with opposition case is that they're very limited in their imagination and they don't have a method of solvency towards the word. We know historically, as we have urbanized in our society, that crime has increased, the number of criminals have increased, our prisons are more packed than they were before. The circumstance here is we are stuck with a problem where more and more people are in prison, where more and more crimes are committed because rates of inequality are really, really high. And OP says, aha, we should do this. What are their responses? One, we should fund police more. But we already do that. We just don't have enough sufficient amount of money to be able to do that. We need to evolve and civilize our system compared to bringing up change rather than use a system that's just historical, that's redundant, that's clearly not working. What is their solution? They're like, oh, this will create ammunition for the Republicans. I'll go through each of their claims and weigh them out specifically, but I think we can reduce the debate to 4 main circumstances. First, on which side reform happens better? OP says you can reform people better by doing better training. But we already do that, and that's really hard. No tells you that in many circumstances doing training is really, really hard because all of these constraint problems, because of all of this money in the system that you give is not enough, because there's more crimes happening and you need more police officers, means that you're not able to train them properly. But in many circumstances, you also can't hire them with a higher degree of change. You cannot keep them to the same degree of accountability when hiring them because you just need more police officers to do those. On our side, this changes. Because on our side, you hire police officers more diligently based on their merits rather than hiring anyone you can in many circumstances. But two, you're able to train them better because there's lesser police officers to be trained. Then they say, aha, they're not able to deal with basics that they have to deal on a regular basis. Note, first, we can teach people basics. I think all of us take like basic calculus classes and basic English classes. I don't know why we have to abandon all of this on their side of the house. I think we can teach basic degrees of skills to all people and all individuals on a regular basis. We can still do that to police officers, but we say that instead of trying to teach them 100% of every skill that they now have to deal with and end up learning only 30%, we say let them only learn 10% of all the other skills and focus on 100% of the other skill. This means we get better police reform and better ways to solve problems going in the long term in the future, which is quite important because we want to have a system that works for our children, for many more people, millions of more people who will come back into our lives. So we went on this clash quite convincingly, and this clash is quite important because it goes into the long term and affects a far larger number of people. Second, on specificity and which system works better, again, no response from opposition. We tell you systematic reasons and structural reasons for why a system works better. I think people are just better at being specific, are better at code switching. On their side of the house, they have to do everything and juggle everything in. Third, on which side do people work better with the system? And this is something opposition is non-responsive to, right? We tell you when people hate the police officers because of the baggage, when gangs hate police officers because they see them as the enemy and see the gang people as being friends. I think on our side of the house, you're able to resolve that animosity because you've created a new system as an intermediary that's actually trying to help them rather than as someone else who locks them up. So on both sides of the house, if people have incentive to work, on our side of the house, people actively work with the system. On their side, they work against the system and they want to destroy the system. But fourth, what about people who are stuck in the system? They have no answer. People who are stuck in the system will always go back and join these things. Therefore, proactiveness is quite important. All of the people who actively go to jail or become criminal do this because of short-term pain. We tell you there are things like cognitive behavioral therapy that you can provide to people so they're able to engage with this better. We tell you there are better mechanisms through which you can actively help people in their real life. They have no solutions. Maybe these systems exist, but people don't know these systems exist. I go to rob a store because I believe that there's nothing that can help me in the current circumstances while my kid is starving. On our side, we have systems to help them. But people are so disenfranchised from the system that they don't know that they can be helped. When we have individual people who are actively looking out, who are trained to be looking out and actively helping people, not just trying to code switch all the time, they're able to reach out to you. They're able to connect to you better. When you call 911 and it's a random person who doesn't know specificity about what you're dealing with, but it's an actual person who has done training to be able to resolve all of this, they're able to help you quite more significantly, quite more better, which means you actually call them next time rather than thinking that there's no solvency available to you, which means we also help the people who actively are stuck in the system, who go through the crime, and we improve their capacity. So on the theory of change in the long term, on helping the people stuck in the system, on also helping the people who are victims of these crimes that can be prevented, we win the debate from government side. Very proud to propose.
So that's the end of the debate. Now we'll be voting on who won. So please cast your votes. Yep. Oh yeah, this side is Omesh and
Just govern off, just change it on your phone.
So you guys gotta use
It's gov, yeah.
a few more seconds.
Post recording after the presentation, so just let it run. I'll cut out anything that's like not appropriate.
Okay, it looks like the votes are in. The Gov side won. So just to remind everyone, we do have a few events coming up. So please sign up for our coffee chat where you can chat with an officer, and sign up for our novice training camp. All of the dates are listed in the form and also on our Instagram. And also make sure to join our Discord for constant updates.
Coffee chats are not necessarily coffee. Like if you can't make it in person, you can just sign up and we can talk on Zoom. You can just get your questions answered. You can ask, oh, what kind of tournaments do we go to? Oh, like how often do you travel? Oh, do we need to do X? Do you make friends? What kind of, like any kinds of questions you have about the club, you can sign up, meet with one of us, get them answered, and we'll connect you with someone will work with your time. Novice Training Camp is an event we are starting this year. Prior to this, we just had like a regular camp, etc. But this also gives you a tournament experience. So usually the end goal of debate as an activity is like a sport, which is you just train with someone, you try to get better, you try to be more convincing. There are specific metrics through which you can improve. How do you like better prioritize your material that you prepare? How do you better spend your preparation time improving things? How do you better deliver them? And the end goal of this is you can go to tournaments, you can go against other people who are trying to do good at the sport, and you can improve at it. So in many circumstances, training camp will give you the opportunity to both, like, we'll give you a small lecture on how you should be thinking about debate, and then we'll have 1 to 2 rounds as time allows that you can debate, and we'll judge and we'll give you feedback, and you can experience what it is like. We'll also have a socials after, probably a board and brew or something, where we'll go through and we'll have food. So yeah, you can also sign up for that. And next week we'll have open practices, so anyone can come in and join. So the first 2 weeks is our rush. Okay, yeah. Thanks for coming, everyone. Hope you had a fun time.
Thank you.